It begins with a phone call, a frantic mother, a missing daughter, a last known location in a seedy part of town. It's a story that plays out in police precincts across the country every single day. But this story, this one phone call, about one woman, would tear the lid off a secret that had been festering for over a decade. It would lead to a stretch of wilderness so ordinary, so desolate, that for years, nobody noticed the ghosts that called it home. Stay tuned and let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. Be sure to subscribe to American True Crime Files Edition on YouTube for chilling stories like this. Let's get into it. This isn't just a story about a serial killer. This is the story of the Gilgo Beach murders. A story of a hunter who used the landscape itself as his weapon. A story that asks one of the most terrifying questions in modern crime. Who is the Long Island serial killer? My name is Meedim Satch, and this is for American True Crime Files. Our story starts, as so many do, with a person. Not a victim, but a seeker. A fighter. In May 2010, a woman named Melissa Barthelemy vanished. She was 24 years old. When she disappeared, her family knew instantly something was wrong. Her sister, Amanda, became a dogged, relentless force. She pressured detectives. She never let up. And then the taunting began. Melissa's phone started making calls. But it wasn't Melissa. It was a man. A man with a calm, almost bored voice. He called her family.
He tormented them.
In one call, he coldly stated, asterisk, you know she's a whore, right? Asterisk. The police, with Amanda Barthelemy breathing down their necks, had to treat this as a top priority. They traced the pings from Melissa's phone. They led to a cell tower on the south shore of Long Island, near a place called Oak Beach. This was a quiet, insular community of waterfront homes, separated from the Atlantic Ocean by a thin, wild strip of land called the Gilgo Beach Barrier Island. A detective, a veteran, had a hunch. He knew that strip of land, a narrow, 10-mile-long stretch of sand, scrub pine, and dense brambles, crisscrossed by a single, unpaved service road. It was the perfect dumping ground, isolated, yet easily accessible. On a cold December morning in 2010, a small team assembled. They were looking for Melissa Barthelemy. They brought an AK-9 unit, a cadaver dog named Blue. The plan was simple. Walk the road, see if the dog hits on anything. They hadn't been out there an hour when Blue started acting strangely. He pulled his handler off the road into the thick, thorny undergrowth. And that's when they found her. But it wasn't Melissa. It was the body of a young woman, wrapped in a burlap sack. She was later identified as Maureen Brainerd Barnes. She had vanished in 2007. The discovery sent a shockwave through the team. This wasn't a one-off.
This was a pattern.
They widened the search. The next day, Blue hit again. And again. And again. In the span of a week, they found 4 bodies, all within a quarter-mile of each other. All young women, all wrapped in burlap. Melissa Barthelemy was among them, finally found. They were dubbed the Gilgo Four. And the press, hungry for a monster, gave him a name, the Long Island serial killer. But the horror was just beginning. The search for a killer had now become a grim archaeological dig. Over the next several months, the body count on that barren stretch of land would climb to 10. And the victims were no longer fitting a single profile. The Gilgo Beach investigation became a sprawling, chaotic nightmare. The 10 sets of remains were a jigsaw puzzle from hell. There were the first 4, the escorts, seemingly connected by their profession, and the burlap sacks. Then, they found a 5th woman, just east of the others. She was different. No burlap. Then a 6th, a woman named Jessica Taylor, a sex worker whose remains had been scattered, a clear attempt at dehumanization. Parts of her were found miles away. And then, the discovery that shattered every theory. They found the bodies of a toddler and a young Asian woman, believed to be her mother. This was no longer just a story about a killer of sex workers. This was a predator of opportunity, of convenience, who saw this desolate landscape as his personal graveyard. The public was terrified. The media frenzy was overwhelming. But for the detectives on the ground, the most terrifying thing was the silence. The killer had left almost no physical evidence. No DNA. No fingerprints. No shell casings. He was a ghost. The only clue, a haunting one, was the burlap. Why burlap? It was an odd, anachronistic material. It wasn't something you just pick up at a local store. Detectives theorized it could be linked to landscaping or gardening. Did the killer have a connection to the land? Was he a hunter, a fisherman, a man who knew these beaches like the back of his hand? As the investigation stretched into years, a new theory emerged, one that was as chilling as it was plausible. The killer, some profilers suggested, wasn't just familiar with the area. He was a commuter. The Gilgo Beach barrier island is traversed by a single, long, lonely highway, the Ocean Parkway. It's a ribbon of asphalt that connects the bustling hubs of Jones Beach to the west and the Hamptons to the east. The theory posited that the killer was someone who drove this road regularly. He could scout his dumping grounds from his car. He could pull over on one of the many secluded turnoffs, drag a body into the brush, and be back on the road in minutes. He was hiding his crimes in plain sight, using the constant, anonymous flow of traffic as his cover. He wasn't a monster lurking in the woods. He was the guy in the truck next to you at the stoplight. And then a potential break. On one of the victims, they had found a black leather belt. Engraved on the belt were 3 initials, WH or HM or NW. It was a tantalizing clue, but it led nowhere. The belt was mass-produced. It was a dead end. The case was growing cold. The public's attention shifted. But the families of the victims never gave up. And neither did a small, dedicated team of detectives. They knew the killer was out there. They could feel him. He had gotten away with murder over and over again. He was arrogant, and arrogance eventually makes killers sloppy. The break, when it came, didn't come from a DNA match or a witness confession. It came from a re-examination of the evidence and a focus on the one thing the killer couldn't completely control, his own habits. Investigators began to perform a massive data dragnet. They analyzed thousands of hours of toll booth footage from the Ocean Parkway. They looked at cell phone tower dumps, tracking every phone that had pinged near the dumping grounds. And they went back to the burlap. They conducted an incredibly detailed forensic analysis. Where did this specific type of burlap come from? Who manufactured it? Who sold it? It was a needle in a haystack search. Slowly, a profile began to emerge from the digital fog. The killer was likely a white male, in his 30s or 40s. He was organized. He had a vehicle, likely an SUV or a truck. He had a stable job, a family maybe. He blended in. He was someone you would never suspect. The most terrifying theory of all was that he wasn't a lone wolf, that he had help. The sheer number of victims, the different methods, could there be more than one killer using the same dumping ground? The investigation narrowed its focus. They began looking at specific individuals. One was a doctor with a history of violence towards women. Another was a carpenter who had access to burlap sacks. But without concrete evidence, they couldn't make an arrest. The frustration was palpable. They had a ghost, a phantom of the Parkway. So, who is the Long Island serial killer? The terrifying truth is, we still don't know.
He could be dead.
He could be in prison for another crime. Or he could be living among us, a respected member of his community, a man with a dark secret buried in the sands of Gilgo Beach. The case remains one of the most active and frustrating in American history. It's a story that defies a neat conclusion. There is no dramatic courtroom showdown, no tearful confession. There is only the wind whistling through the scrub pines and the waves crashing on the shore, hiding their secrets. The legacy of the Gilgo Beach murders is a stain on the American landscape. It's a reminder that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like the guy next door. Sometimes it's the anonymous driver on the highway you take to work every day. The investigation remains open. The tip lines are still active. The families still wait for answers. And on the Ocean Parkway, cars still speed by, their drivers unaware of the ghosts that linger just a few feet from the asphalt. The story of the Long Island serial killer is unfinished. And until it is, No one who knows it can ever look at a lonely stretch of road in quite the same way again. For American True Crime Files, I'm Meeting Satch. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more chilling true crime stories and real-world inspired dramas. Like, comment, and share. Hit the bell for update on new stories.